When you think about the BMW 3 Series, your mind probably goes straight to the E30, the E46, or maybe even the E90. Those are some of the most legendary cars that BMW has ever made. But there's one BMW that has been overlooked for decades, and that's the E36. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the German engineering that makes the E36 such a great platform for enthusiasts like yourself, and specifically, we're going to look at the engine and the chassis. So buckle up, Bimmer boys and gals, because we're going B to B on this BMW while you're probably on the toilet taking a BM.
Big thanks to Omaze for partnering with us so we could bring you another episode of Bumper to Bumper. If you don't know already, Omaze is this really cool company that offers you the chance to win once-in-a-lifetime experiences, all while supporting amazing causes, like the Ronald Reagan Medical Center at UCLA, the same center that helped save James's life when he had a heart attack. We love them over there. Have you seen James lately? He's friggin' svelte, man. He's a healthy boy thanks to UCLA. But when you donate at Omaze, you're not just supporting great causes, you're also entered for a chance to win amazing experiences ranging from dream vacations all across the world to hanging out with your favorite celebrities. You can also donate for the chance to win super sweet dream cars like the 2020 Corvette Stingray Z51, the Porsche 911 Cabriolet, the Ferrari GTC4 Lusso. The list goes on and on. It's a ton of cars. You can check out all those cars at omaze.com/cars. And while you're there, enter for a chance to win one. Thank you, Omaze, for sponsoring this episode. And thank you for supporting the companies that support Donut. We love you.
Now, inline sixes are exactly what they sound like. They are 6 cylinders arranged in a line. And compared to smaller 4-bangers, for example, 6 cylinders are pretty long. And generally, they're too long to be mounted transversely. That's this way. So they need to be placed longitudinally. That's the length of the car, which requires a much longer hood line. Now that might be a great look for sports cars, but most manufacturers tend to use the same engines across various platforms, and a super long block just isn't very practical in other cars, like a minivan or an SUV or, I don't know, a very small front hood car. Now let's get back to the E36 and what makes its 6-cylinder engine so good. And by 6-cylinder engine, I really mean 6-cylinder engines, because in the 10 or so years that BMW produced the E36, they offered 10 gasoline-powered straight 6 engine options. It's a lot of engines. If looking at all 10 of those engines makes your brain
turn into mush a little bit.
You're not alone, my friend, but it's not that confusing when you break down those engine codes. Me and you, we're gonna be the Alan Turing of deciphering engine codes right now. Let's get into it, okay? So the first digit tells you the engine family. So M means it was the standard engine produced until 2001. And the S designates that it's a performance engine. So they used S engines in M cars like the M3, but the M engines in non-M cars like the 330 Ci. Off to a totally non-confusing start. Thank you, BMW engineers. I told you, I keep telling you guys, engineers don't know how to name stuff. Now the second digit tells you which cylinder configuration it uses. And in this case, 5 indicates it's an inline 6-cylinder. Now you might think, hey, you should probably use number 6 to designate this, but apparently BMW decided 6 should represent V8 cars. I'm telling you right now, an engineer did this and he was bad. Now the third digit represents the variation of the engine. Now these engines evolved over the years, so the 0 in M50 means it is the original design. M51 would have been the first variation. That's the diesel one I was talking about, and M52 is the second variation. Now most E36s are either gonna have an M50 or an M52. Now moving on to the fourth digit, in this case B tells us that it's a gasoline engine. Why didn't BMW use the letter G to designate their gas engine? Well, because the German word for gas is Benzin.
Benzin.
How did I pronounce that, my German friends? I hope I did good. Now the next 2 digits are pretty easy. They tell you the displacement. So 30 means it is a 3.0 liter engine. And lastly, TU is BMW's special designation to let you know there was a technical update, or in German, technisches Update.
Mein Deutsche ist scheiße.
I nailed that. And finally, the US means it was only sold in the United States. Pretty simple. Now, all this confusing jargon aside, these engines all share the same basic architecture. A dual overhead camshaft with 4 valves per cylinder. That's 24 valves total, which is double what you got in the E30's single cam 6-cylinder engine. So what's the benefit of having twin cams? Well, you're more efficient and you get more power. Now, one cam regulates the engine's intake valves and the other regulates the exhaust valves. And the distance between those two cams means that the valves can be placed further apart, which is great because that improves the flow of exhaust gases through the engine. And this extra valve distance also means the spark plug can be placed in a more ideal position for sparking up all that free flowing air fuel mixture that you got sucking in your intake valve. Now, a cool benefit to dual overhead cams is less valve noise. Have you ever heard a BMW E30 before? Here's actually a clip of one of our editors, Max's E30. Listen to this sucker tick away.
Real stinky.
But the 24 valve engines, on the other hand, are quiet as a little mouse. So compared to the E30, the E36 engines are more efficient, they're more powerful, and they are lighter. But that's not the only thing they've got cooking. It's time we talk about the real meat and potatoes of the E36's sexy sixes. That's right, I'm talking about BMW's legendary VANOS. And VANOS stands for Variable Nackenwellensteuerung. I hope that. And that word is German for variable cam timing. And it's the same principle as Honda's VTEC, Toyota's VVTi, or Nissan's VTC that we talked about in the 300ZX episode. Now, if you want to learn more about variable timing, I'll slip the link in the description below. But in a nutshell, the engine's timing, which is when the valves open and close, it can change dynamically depending on driving conditions. You get the benefit of having a very sensible, economical engine at lower RPMs, but at higher RPMs, the timing is advanced to allow more air and fuel into the combustion chamber. Now say it with me now, kids. You got more air, you got more fuel, and James, what do we have?
Are you serious, dude? Nah, come on.
Now, VANOS isn't exactly like variable cam timing used in other cars in typical BMW fashion. It's slightly more complicated because it wouldn't be a BMW if it wasn't just a little bit more complicated. I'm gonna compare it to VTEC, which changes the engine's valve timing by hydraulically switching between a high lift and a low lift cam lobe. Now, the low lift profile gives you higher efficiency at lower RPMs, and the high profile gives you a little squirt of power in the high RPM range. VANOS, on the other hand, does what's called cam phasing, where the camshaft itself is rotated to adjust the lobe angle. Now, depending on the engine's load, the ECU will send a signal to the solenoid that sends pressurized oil to a helical gear, and that pushes into the camshaft, and that's what causes the camshaft to rotate. And that rotation either advances or retards the timing of when the valves open. Now, most E36s had a single VANOS, meaning it only affects the intake cam. So when that helical gear engages to advance the timing, you get a slight overlap between the intake and exhaust valves. Now, this allows for exhaust gas recirculation, or EGR. Now, because of that slight overlap, not all of the exhaust gases are allowed to escape through the valves. So some of it gets sucked back into the cylinder. And the recycled exhaust gas dilutes the oxygen in the air coming into the cylinder, which helps absorb some of that heat from combustion. Now, less heat means less pollutants into the atmosphere, so a big part of EGR has to do with emissions. And I know you're saying, Jerry, what the heck? That sounds kind of counterintuitive. Why would you want less oxygen in your combustion chamber? But when you're just cruising around town, EGR helps keep your engine running more efficiently. And efficiency is something those German engineers happen to absolutely love. But hold up, okay, you're in a BMW. You're late for your latte appointment and you need to get across town fast without using any blinkers in typical BMW fashion. So You put the pedal to the floor and your E36 brain decides it's VANOS time. The helical gear retracts back into its little hole and your intake cam pivots back in place. No more stinky exhaust gas in the chamber now. We need more air so we can get more boom boom, so we can get more power, so we can get to our latte appointment. Because you know if you show up late, Dylan's gonna order your latte with oat milk and then you're gonna wanna punch him in the face because you don't like oat milk, you like almond milk. But you call it almond juice because how the heck can almonds have milk? It should be called almond juice. I stand by that, okay? So today, in 2020, you can find a running and driving E36 that uses this fancy smancy technology for like $4,000. And that's one of the reasons why this car is so common with the drifters and other enthusiasts who like to get their knuckles a little greasy. I'm talking to you D-list fans, you greasy freaking knuckle freaks. So now that we've got the basics of how these engines work out of the way, it's time to talk about the chassis. The chassis. But why am I Italian? Doesn't make sense. The chassis. There you go. When the E36 debuted in 1990, it had a lot to live up to. I mean, its older bro, the E30, is supposedly the most successful touring car platform of all time. So how do you take something that's already the best and make it better? Well, just like when Taco Bell released the Nacho Cheese Doritos Loco Taco Supreme, the E36 was beefier, it's stronger, and it's packed full of delicious, crunchy flavor. And that all starts at the chassis. And yes, our sponsor for this episode is not Taco Bell, but if you work at Taco Bell and you want to sponsor us, we would love that. Now, for one, the wheelbase is 5 inches longer than the E30. That's about this long. Okay? And what that 5 inches meant for BMW owners in the 90s was more legroom and more trunk space. But what does that 5 inches mean for you, the dollar store drift rat in the year 2020? Well, it means this boy is easier to get a little sideways. So, let's do a little imagination, okay? Say you're in your Catfish Camaro. You got the T-tops open, you got your CD blasting from your 6 CD changer, and all of a sudden, the road gets a little twisty. So naturally, you give the steering wheel a nice little yank, you dump the clutch, and you start to oversteer, or as you youngsters call it, entering a hectic skid. Now there is a lot of physics going on while this happens, but what we care about right now is rotational inertia, and more specifically, the force required to rotate the vehicle. Now a longer wheelbase means a longer distribution of a vehicle's mass, and longer distribution means it takes a lot more centripetal force to rotate the vehicle. And in a shorter car, the vehicle's mass is condensed, so it has less rotational inertia, meaning not as much force is needed to rotate it. You want to see how you can put rotational inertia to the test? Well, come on, let's hop in the old Jerry bus and let's take a trip over to my sports lab. Come on, let's go. So I want to talk about polar moment of inertia, and that's how difficult it is to get an object to rotate around its axis. So to demonstrate this, I have a basketball and I have a broom pole, and they weigh roughly the same. Let's just say they have the exact same mass. Now, if I want to go and I want to rotate this basketball around its center of mass, it's pretty easy to do that, right? It has a low polar moment of inertia. Now, if I take this broom pole and I try to get it to rotate around its center of axis, it's a lot harder. It takes a lot more effort to get it to spin just as fast as that basketball and as many times. It has a high polar moment of inertia. So just like a car, this has a higher polar moment of inertia. It's harder to get it to rotate around its axis. And like imagine this being a long front end car and this being a little smart car. There you go. But if a longer wheelbase needs more force to go sideways, why would anyone prefer that in motorsports? Well, mainly because it gives the driver more control over the car. Sure, a shorter car will rotate faster, but it'll also be a lot more squirrely. I mean, think about what would happen if you yanked the wheel in a smart car. I mean, you'd probably flip it, but you'd also probably have a real hard time keeping it under control if it wasn't flipping. And it would be extremely difficult to link your drifts together if you were trying to drift your smart car. But what a longer wheelbase does is the drifts will be more smooth and predictable. The E36's wheelbase is a good compromise between short and squirrely and long and slow. Now, like I said before, there are a ton of other factors that are going to affect how a car behaves when it's getting sideways. But this is the main reason longer cars are generally preferred in drifting. Now, aside from having a slightly longer wheelbase, the E36's suspension also makes it favorable to modern day car modders. Now, just like the E30, the E36 uses an independent McPherson strut front end. And this is the same type of front suspension found in most modern cars today. You have a telescopic strut that is mounted vertically between the top of the wheel hub and the lower strut tower. This is your classic coil over shock absorber, aka a coil over. And this technology has been around since the 50s and is still used today because 1, it's simple, 2, it's beefy, and 3, it is cheap to produce. But unlike its elder brethren, the E36 came equipped with a Z-axle multi-link rear suspension. And what is a Z-axle multi-link rear suspension, Jerry? Well, to put simply, the rear suspension uses multiple links and it looks like a Z. Now, BMW used multiple rear control arms that allow suspension geometry to stay the same even under heavy cornering. See, before multi-link rear ends, BMW used what's called a rear semi-trailing arm suspension, where each wheel connects to a single A-arm that pivots at the body. And semi-trailing arms are not horrible, but they don't allow you to adjust toe or camber. And that's, should I get a wheel? I'll get a wheel. Here, I got a tire. I got a tire from for my dirt bike here. So camber is this. That's this angle. That's how much the tire's rotated this way. And toe is this. How much it tows. And on a track car, you want all the suspension fine tuning that you can get. So this can be a pretty major drawback when you're trying to tune your suspension. Now, another problem with rear trailing arms is that as the wheels travel under suspension load, camber changes, which affects the car's handling. Totally throws off your balance, like a ballerina with the wrong shoes. And drifters are actually just like ballerinas. They're precise and delicate, they're full of power. So the E36's multi-link suspension eliminates most of the drawbacks from a trailing arm setup. Your wheels make better contact with the ground, you get more adjustability, and there's less noise and vibration traveling to the body. Again, BMW was going for comfort here. But what's the main benefit nowadays? Well, you get lots of aftermarket opportunities. You could throw some nasty coilovers on the front, stiff rear springs and shocks, and maybe some poly bushings to replace your old, worn out, multi-link rubbers. Gotta love aftermarket people. They support aftermarket is what makes the business go round and round. Now, between the easily customizable suspension and the beefy yet reliable engine options, the E36 chassis is set up really well for people who want a cheap entry point into motorsports. It might not have the cult status of the E30 or the fancy technology of the newer cars, but it's a great value when you consider the engineering that went into these things. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of B2B. I love making this show. I thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned some stuff. Hope you laughed a little bit. You want to know more about the E30? James breaks it down. Follow me at Jeremiah Burton. Hit me up, send me a DM. I'll try to get back to you. I try to get through all of them. So bye for now.